We've got a special guest joining the show today. One of my favorite people in this industry, Richard Johnson, national college football writer for SI.com, also a co-host of the Split Zone Duo podcast with Stephen Godfrey and Alex Kirshner. By the way, I'm a patron, so when you're not listening to Until Saturday, be sure to listen to Split Zone Duo, right? RJ, how are you, sir? How are you? Have you recovered from your trip? You were at Texas, Alabama this weekend. Have you recovered from your trip to
not really, but it's good to be home. It was good to be on the road. That's the first game I've done this season. It's good to be on the road. Good to be at that game in that atmosphere. I mean, that place can be a church when it's New Mexico State or UMass in town, as many other places can be. But for the big games and the big ones, it cranks up. But obviously, at the end, it was the orange-clad corner of the stadium that was doing plenty of the cheering, and it was really a fun game to be at.
That's awesome. So as we get started here with you, we want to do a little something fun. We're a couple weeks into the season. We've gotten to see a little bit of teams. We're getting to feel for where everybody is. So we want to ask for a few different teams. Do you believe?
Do you believe?
And yes, Dion. Dion's asking, do you believe? So we're going to go through some teams here and some scenarios, and we're going to ask.
And remember,
you,
Richard, if you say you don't believe, then it's personal. Okay,
that's right.
That's either do you believe? If you don't, it's personal.
That's right.
Okay.
It's 100% personal, and Dion and Shador are going to call you out in the post game. So just keep that in mind. But let's start with Texas. You saw them live. You saw them what they did to Alabama. Do you believe Texas is a legitimate playoff team?
Yes. God, that's going to get clipped hard.
He did it. He said it.
That is going to get clipped so hard. Look, I was thinking dark horse coming into the season, to be completely honest with you. I think I said it on our podcast. I was interested in them. What I saw on Saturday is the one concerning thing I will say this about Texas, their ability to run at the end, their ability to run the ball when everybody knew they were going to run the ball did prove positive. Sark even mentioned that after the game. He said that was the biggest thing and is the biggest thing he looks at when you talk about the running game. So that was nice to see. The rest of the game, running the ball was a little bit of a different proposition because Alabama's front is also really good. I've been really impressed with Texas up front this whole season. I thought they played pretty well in the game on Saturday. I mean, they absolutely collapsed pockets around Jalen Milroe. Milroe was able to make stuff happen because he's a phenomenal athlete. But I think Texas up front is going to be the defining factor here this season. I think defensively up front, they do have the juice. Offensively, I have no issues with particularly them going into in a one-game situation with a bespoke kind of game plan, right? That's what Sark it's Sark's superpower. It's what he's one of the best at in college football, coming into a game and having a game plan that's going to keep you on your toes, keep you on edge, and be able to the way that they, the run game was not exactly going so well in the first three quarters of the game. And so they didn't really press it. They didn't really stay on it. They said, we'll go sideways. We'll screen you. We'll run constraint planes. And then we'll hit you over the top. And so I really thought they were on point on Saturday with those things. But yeah, looking at what Texas was able to do on Saturday, being able to take legitimate haymakers from Alabama and keep on swinging themselves and really finish the drill, finish the mission that they started last year. I'm bullish on this Texas team.
I'm curious, Richard, just from watching that live, on the other side of that too, like where do you think Alabama goes from here with Jalen Milroe? Because I'm looking at some of the numbers from that game. Like 2 games in now, he has we take out sacks, he's run the ball 15 times this season. 10 of them have been scrambles. Like there's not really a whole lot of designing, I feel like, to the skill set there. I'm curious what you thought, like the Alabama offensive identity here going forward. Obviously, they don't really want to bench him, or else and maybe there just wasn't a moment for that in the game. We'll see, right, how it plays out. But like, offensively, where do you think Alabama goes from here?
Nick Saban actually said he thought about it. He said, it didn't elevate to a discussion, and it's not something, obviously, they didn't action it, but he thought about it. I mean, and you have to think about it when you play as poorly as he did throwing the ball. I mean, there's no secret. Mm-hmm. He did not play well throwing the ball, and Alabama got into their nightmare scenario, which is we have to be pass first, pass centric, and they don't have that gear right now. Part of that is because of the receivers, the receiving talent that they don't have. The other thing is, what they have a quarterback and what they don't have a quarterback. I think he struggles when he's a pure drop back passer. Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing is, I would say get some design QB run game in there, man. They talked all season and even showed in week 1 that they are ready, willing, and able to spam 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. But then you get into the game on Saturday and they didn't really do that a ton. They did it a little bit in the first quarter, but it's not something that they really stuck with. So I wonder if, 12 personnel, get some more design QB runs in there, and try to use his ability to the best of his ability moving forward. But if they get into drop back passing situations, I think it's pretty clear there's a limitation there.
Yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned the run game. I thought, and Steve Sarkisian talked about this on Monday, is nobody runs in Alabama, and they weren't going to press, like you said, they weren't going to press the issue when they realized it was going to be tough sledding early on. But I thought that was a real feather in his cap. And you mentioned the game planning. I thought it was terrific. And that's the thing is, this Texas team has had a lot of lulls throughout the seasons or throughout the past years. This third quarter lull, early fourth quarter lull, where they come out hot because that opening script is good. But I thought the way he adjusted down the stretch was really impressive, and the way they attacked. And the one thing that stood out is they didn't play just to kind of manage the game and get to the end. They were still taking shots deep in the game. I guess what stood out to you about the way Sark managed that game?
Yeah, the first and foremost, Sark's no dummy, and he knows that you got to aim for the head against this Alabama team, and they did. Plenty of fourth. I was kind of surprised there were a couple of fourth downs that they didn't go for it. But it's pretty clear that they came in and said, hey, we've got to win this game. We can't just kind of babysit this to the end. But, and this is kind of a commentary on Alabama. Watching that game, being at that game, there's nothing that made you think that Alabama was deserved to win that game or was going to win that game throughout, besides kind of the aura and the specter of Alabama. Like, that's the only reason watching that game you think, oh, Alabama still got a shot here. Like, Texas was the better team in that game and won the game. There are a lot of times where those two can be different things, especially against Alabama. I mean, you've seen Ole Miss beat them with acts of God, right? You've seen Auburn beat them with an act of God. Like, sometimes it takes some just stuff to beat Alabama, particularly in Tuscaloosa. But that's not what happened on Saturday. Texas was the better team.
All right, Richard, let's move on. I believe I'm sure you've heard by now, Colorado's kind of a big deal here 2 weeks in.
Yeah, you're the first person that's brought
America's team, or whatever we want to call them. All right. Do you believe will Colorado beat their win total by the end of the month? And if you want to add this as well, do you think they finish with a winning record? By
the end of the month, no. Winning record, I think, is within the realm of possibility. We're looking at a bowl team. I mean, that offense is too good at this point in time not to bowl. It's just, I thought this was like a 4-8, maybe 3-9 football team coming into the season. It's pretty clear that like 6 wins is right around where they're at, if not a couple more. I still definitely have questions about what's going to happen up front. I definitely, Nebraska, before it kind of really went to hell in a handbasket there, showed that you can run the ball against this Colorado front. I expect, particularly USC and Oregon, with the ways those offenses are built, to actually try to run the ball and actually execute that pretty well. But they're going to have an offense that's going to be able to supernova and keep them in a lot of these games. As you saw, that offense in the second half kind of put the hammer down. They obviously had to attack Nebraska's defense differently than they did TCU. And a lot of that has to do with, I think, the fact that Nebraska's defensive execution was a lot better than TCU. Nebraska actually knows how to tackle. I think Nebraska also got into a situation where they made Shedeur try to be a big boy. They said, we're rushing 3, we're dropping 8, and we're making Shedeur make some decisions here. We're making Shedeur force the issue and press the issue. They are going to get into some trouble at some point in time unless Shedeur gets rid of the ball. And that's a big thing that's going to happen. I understand why he doesn't want to give up on plays, particularly when you've got guys like a Jimmy Horn and a Travis Hunter who can make second order plays work. And Shedeur can run around a little bit back there. I don't think he's a willing scrambler. I don't think he is a scramble first quarterback, but he absolutely can run around and do some things behind there. But this holding on to the ball too much is going to get them in some trouble, I think, moving forward here in some of these games, if it's something that continues. I understand why he doesn't want to give up on plays, but sometimes you have to live another down.
It was fascinating to watch live. He really keeps, you're right, he's definitely not a scramble first guy. He really keeps his eyes downfield in that offense, even though like he knows going into games, just because of what they've got up front, there is going to be pressure. And I think, he gave Nebraska's DC, Tony White, a lot of credit for the plan they had. He felt a lot of heat, but man, I was just blown away in that game by the way that he handles pressure, knowing it's coming. And you're right, there's playing with fire there a little bit, especially against better teams. But I was just really, he stayed. I didn't really see him freak out and kind of really be bothered by that heat at any point last week.
No, it's just making sure he takes the ball to the right places and on time to those places. That's the thing that's gonna be. We're gonna have to see. We're gonna have to see how that evolves. What was very clear was that Nebraska was going to take away his safety valve out of the backfield, was Dylan Edwards. They were not up here for what letting the TCU thing happen, where Dylan Edwards just get to run wild because we forget about him out of the backfield. Nebraska said, all right, take away the security blanket, make him make some legitimate decisions and make him be a real deal quarterback back there in the pocket. I think it was a little slow going there in the first half, obviously, but in the second half, they started to get stuff going. And I think that's the thing. You kind of have to count on the fact that at some point in time, Colorado's going to score, right? If you're a team that's kind of evenly matched with them or kind of like a little eye to eye on talent, like you would say that Nebraska was, you would say that TCU was coming into that game. We're not talking about the teams that I think are demonstrably better than Colorado, like Oregon is and like USC is and like probably Washington is. If you're kind of eye to eye with them, you got to understand that offense is going to score at some point in time. You're going to have to match them kind of tit for tat moving forward.
Let's move on to the next one. Miami with a big win over Texas A&M this weekend, 48-33. They put up some points, brother. They put up some points. Do you believe Miami is for real?
It sort of looks like it at this point in time because I think even 33 that A&M put on the board is a little suspect. Like that's not kind of the number if you play that game 10 times that they would put up, apparently. They had two obviously miscues on Miami had two miscues on special teams that kind of let those drives be kind of walk-in drives and kind of almost spotted them 14 points in some respects. Miami played well. Tyler Van Dyke, when he's protected, the arm is there. There's no question about the arm. The question was the decision-making. The question was how the offensive line is going to hold up. I thought the offensive line was going to be better coming into this season, and it's pretty clear that they are. A&M was not really able to get significant pressure on Van Dyke, significantly affect him, move him off his spots, make him be mobile, which is where I think things break down for him. If Miami's going to block him up and protect him, then we got something there.
All right, Richard, let's jump ahead here a little bit. Big matchup coming up in a couple weeks here. Let's start on one side of it. What about Notre Dame? Are you in on Notre Dame 3 games in? Are they, they're top 10 now? Are they real deal?
That's impressive, man. I would like to know what happens when you don't have a 45-minute locker room break, lightning break in there, but that was impressive on Saturday. I think Hardman played well once he got going. The run game is going to play well, is going to be there. And I think Notre Dame's usage of the tight ends is still going to be impressive and give them a little bit of an extra gear running the ball and blocking things up. I'm not saying they weren't explosive against NC State. And I think the ability to handle an NC State front is something that fills you with a lot of optimism for Notre Dame because NC State up front is still as good, as aggressive, as fast, as physical as I think you want. NC State's problems, in my opinion, were on offense more than they were on defense on Saturday. But coming into the Ohio State game in a couple weeks here, yeah, man, I'm really excited for how this game stacks up. I think Ohio State is better on defense than you may expect. On offense, though, for Ohio State, some questions besides who at wide receiver so far. I think maybe you'd like a little bit more from Ohio State through 2 games. And then again, I think some of what happened in week 1 with Ohio State has to do with Indiana up front, which I also think separately has made some strides forward and is pretty good up front. They made some pretty big portal additions. So it's kind of trying to suss out that transitive September property of what you've seen and who you've seen it against. You can kind of get yourself in a knots there. But so far, Notre Dame has dispatched 2 teams without a pulse and pretty soundly beaten another. And I think I've got a lot of optimism for the Irish. All
right, you touched on it. On the other side of that, we got an Ohio State team that has dropped a whopping 58 points through 2 weeks. I love that these 2 teams get a little time to get some things figured out, that we have an end of September non-conference game of this magnitude. Where are you at on the Buckeyes? I guess maybe I should ask it this way. Should they be worried that Notre Dame could beat up on them potentially?
Yeah, because last year we had an absolute rock fight, and you're just like, all right, well, Notre Dame's never scoring, right? Like eventually Ohio State's going to kind of figure it out and whatever. But if Notre Dame is going to put up points and Ohio State has to chase in this game in any way, shape, or form, which I don't know that they will, but Notre Dame has a quarterback who can force the issue, who can press the issue. He's capable of doing that. On Ohio State's end, you have a receiver, 2 receivers that are going to be there. But, I wonder how Marcus Freeman on defense is going to have this Notre Dame team playing. I think that previously Notre Dame's or Marcus Freeman defenses are teams that, hey, we're playing man. We're going to match up 1-to-1 with you, and we're going to make you blank. Marvin Harrison is not a person you can do that to. You're going to have to figure some stuff out in coverage to try to limit somebody of that talent, of that ability. And obviously Emeka Egbuka, also a standout there. So that is going to be a chess match that I think is going to be fascinating, because similar to Steve Sarkisian, Ryan Day is another guy who you count on to come into a big game with a significantly impressive blueprint and then watch Ohio State try to execute it, particularly against great defenses. The Peach Bowl last year, semifinal, different scenario because it's a month run-up. But it's something that is in your mind of, hey, when big games come, Ryan Day has the ability to bring his best with the game plan. And so how those 2 teams stack up in a couple of weeks is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, let's talk about, well, there's one big game this week involving your alma mater, Florida.
I was hoping you'd forget.
Oh, yeah. So Florida, Tennessee this weekend. How are you feeling about your Gators? And do you believe, we'll start with Florida. Do you believe in Florida at this point? And what have you seen from the Gators so far?
Florida's biggest problem is going to be a thing that Tennessee can exploit, right? Utah was better than them in week 1. I'm not saying Utah was not better than them. But the reason why it looked the way it looked against Utah was because of the procedural deficiencies, whatever you want to call it. They screwed things up procedurally and organizationally multiple times. If you do that against Tennessee is built to break you. They will escort you out of the paint if you are not lined up right. If you are, that Tennessee offense is, and the tempo and the splits and all that kind of stuff, before the ball is snapped, they are built to test you organizationally. If Florida's not ready to meet that test, it's going to get ugly. But if they are, and they can play with Tennessee, game script then kind of comes into the focus. Is Florida with Graham Mertz, are they going to try to control the game? Are they going to try to kind of sit on it and take the air out of the ball and not let Tennessee have much of the ball? Is Tennessee going to be able to get out into an early lead, in which case then Florida may have to chase? How on point is Joe Milton going to be on Saturday? Is this a situation of, Well, we know the classic, we know Joe Milton is going to be able to throw deep. Can he throw underneath with time, with accuracy, and figure that out? So I think a lot of it ends up being game script dependent with Florida and Tennessee. It's going to be a fascinating matchup on Saturday night.
And with Tennessee, you mentioned Joe Milton. Where are you on Milton and on Tennessee? Obviously had a big year last year, that program, but where are you on where they're headed in 2023?
This is kind of the game where you're going to see, you dispatch with Virginia, fine. And then you beat an FCS team. I'm not even really look, I know they didn't put up 60 points against that FCS team, but whatever. This is it for Joe Milton. And this is this is where we see, it's not just the howitzer arm. It's how are you a complete quarterback in this system? And I think that Tennessee, a thing we always forget about Tennessee is that Tennessee offense, a Heupel offense, you have to run the ball effectively. And I think that you can say a lot about Florida, but I think Florida is actually pretty confident in their ability to an extent to defend the run. And so that's the thing that more than anything else I'm going to be able to show or I'm going to be looking for on Saturday is how Tennessee is a complete offense in that game. Are they able to run the ball? Are they able to take a little bit of the pressure off of Joe Milton? Are they able to kind of sustain drives in that way? They were last year. They ran the hell out of the ball against Florida in that game last year. How does that translate on Saturday against the Gators?
Good stuff. RJ, thanks so much for joining us. Richard Johnson, college football writer, SI.com, co-host Split Zone Duo podcast. Thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Always a pleasure, guys.